I will try to propose you now to think motion in a very different manner. A manner that is, however, rather close to how some branches of cognitive sciences are now generating understandings of movement. How about if we start understanding movement from our proprioceptive sensations? Proprioception is a sense, an internal sense of muscle movement, a position that allows you, for example, to know where your hand is without looking at it. But in a broader sense, one could say that it embraces all other senses. And what is important is that it exists only as there is motion. So we only sense, in a general sense, motion is like a meta-sense. We only sense insofar as there is motion going on, as there is a difference in the input, if you want. But now, if we start to understand how you feel motion, how do you feel your motion? Well, of course, there's no universal answer to this. Each culture and each body generates particular awarenesses and perceptions of motion, but they tend to be, of course, influenced and informed by frameworks, even architectural frameworks, like this whole. But my suggestion is that if we start to deepen into how sensations operate internally in the body, they cannot be reduced to a single point. They cannot be observed from an outside. They cannot be just looked from a visual perspective. They are multisensorial. So, we need to undo a whole mechanicistic tradition of generating an epistemology of movement. And that is a huge work. Only that would be like 1,000 projects. So we will try to do something about that. Because most of the projects, of the billion, whatever, hundreds, thousands of projects that are dealing in the world now with these issues, normally assume this mechanicistic tradition. So this shift really produces, eventually, a very significant change in the way we can approach this, if we manage. Well, we can't really, I don't think there's so much time now. Let's speak about affordances, the intelligibility of our environments. Well, let's try to give a hint of that. An affordance is a concept that was developed by James Gibson, who developed an ecological theory of visual perception. It's a very interesting concept because it tells you how is it that this, for example, invites me to hold it in a particular way and to press the buttons in a particular manner. How does a glass invite you to hold it, fill it, and drink from it, and so on? Well, of course, the interesting thing about affordances is that we learn them bodily. It's an embodied learning. It's an embodied knowledge. We learn it through moving. Since we are born, we see other bodies and ourselves moving towards glasses, and so we learn what the glass is as an intelligible affordance in a bodily manner. This can be applied to virtually anything. Affordance is not just an object, it can be a room, it can be another person, it can be a whole ecosystem. And affordance is also interesting because how something affords itself to you can vary enormously, from prohibiting you to use it to inviting or seducing you. So that's also very interesting in how things afford themselves or not in our environment. Now, what is interesting is that information technologies tend to super align us in very foreclosed affordances, so that you absolutely know that you can only move in a particular way to do. Click and something happens. Linear relations of movement. You do click and something happens. You press a key and something happens. You are super aligned in a number of perceptual frameworks. The screen, the visual interface, which of course has a huge long history, back to Renaissance perspective, back to Euclidean geometry, and so on. And all this informs the affordance of the interface. The affordance of the interface. What happens if we start to develop unintelligible affordances? Well, you can't see this very well. Can we lower a little bit more, please? These are excerpts from architecture, 3D architectures that I have developed in projects, these actually emerge from interactions with bodies. It's the same form, metaform, or whatever you want to call it, that transforms through the interaction of a body with it in a space. How would you relate to something like this? Of course, you don't have a set of given embodied knowledges that allow you to say, well, I have to just hold it, or I have to come close to it. You don't know. There's nothing foreclosed here. So this could be one of the starting points to explore cognitive environments that are not totally preempted and foreclosed in the way that you can interact with them. And this is another thing that we would like to propose in this project. How can we develop cognitive embodied environments that that are in a way opening up? Good. That are in a way opening up the potential different ways, most of them not yet thinkable, of interacting and moving. You see what I mean? So rather than being immersed in a super aligned field of affordances that already have their meanings attached, their functions attached, their linear relations foreclosed, what happens if we start relating to environments that are radically open in what they offer us from a cognitive kind of perspective? Well, I can't show you, I think I don't have time to show you the video. These are excerpts from videos of performances of projects of interactive dance that I did years ago, where you have these 3D amorphogenetic rather than amorphogenetic things transforming in relation to a moving body. This would be like, again, another starting point to investigate potential relations of movement and design based on movement rather than on pre-given shapes and functions. So up there you see the kind of thing that we are not going to develop in this project. So manual control, visual control and surfaces are typical affordances that I think need to be rethought. They are fundamentally linked to a culture of control. Not universally, but contingently. I mean, they have become like the substrate of a culture of control. This doesn't mean that, of course, we can still do interesting things with manual control, manual interaction or visual interaction. But I think that we can go much further and investigate other ways of moving and relating that don't imply this manual element, this visual connection connected to a screen. So just imagine screens and tables, the importance they have for our cognitive scaffolding, if you want to call it like that. We wouldn't be able to think the way we do linearly, for example, if it were not for specific kinds of architectures that have constructed collectively thinking. Because thinking is always collective. You know, this issue of now attempting to produce collective thinking through connecting minds to the internet is not essentially new. So thinking has always been a relational issue. Of course, this demands lots of explanations, but again, it's a theory that is not mine. It's been there for quite a long time. I find it in Bruno Latour and everywhere. Now, this reminds me of our friends with these are what I call wearable architectures. This is just a figuration I have done for the project. But so we will start, as you saw, with exploring, digital landscapes in a way, but then trying to transpose this into physical modules, physical proto-environments. Now this is a mixture of, it's a proto-architecture, but it's also like a proto-whatever, something you can wear. But it could also be like, it's supposed to be moving and changing with you. So it's a bit like one of your robots. But the idea is that it is like an affective architecture. But its affects have nothing to do with what we are used to interpret in terms of human emotions. So we are interested to promote or to investigate and to develop in this project what I said before, post-human affects. So affects, proto-emotions that are not identifiable with anything we know. Because affects, just like anything else, is also a subject for creative invention. Something we forget sometimes, because we are embedded with a romantic tradition of trying to reproduce contagiously certain given forms of social affect, forgetting sometimes that that is a fundamental element of social control in itself. So I suggest that for a free society, if we are a good utopian, we would need to undertake maybe the task of reinventing our affects permanently, because our affects are the way we relate to the world, the way we